I'm going to jump right in because what Saba was talking about with those EVR insights matches up really well with the outcomes that you're looking to achieve this year. We see the number one thing that you're trying to achieve from your technology strategy is modernization and simplification, which matches up with what Saba was talking about with the amount of resources spent trying to get out of that modernization stage. We see being secure and trusted is really closely linked to that tech modernization, especially when we talk to your CISOs about what the biggest barriers are from keeping your organization safe. They say things like legacy technology, stack complexity, too many manual processes. Then we have optimizing costs and improving operational effectiveness, which basically means that we're trying to do more with less, and we're trying to enable the rest of the business to do that as well with technology. Now, I'm not going to cover those top points too much, because number one, Saba did an incredible job of it. Number two is we need to talk about your fifth top priority, data. It was your fourth top priority last year and your third top the year before. So it's slipping down the list. But the real reason that we need to talk about it is because of that seventh line item. There is a tidal wave coming, and it's called artificial intelligence. We all know that AI is not anything new. A lot of us have been using the tools and systems for a long period of time. But when I sit down with the other ADAPT analysts and key members of our advisory board, and we examine the explosion in data in the past 24 months, the maturity of specific models and some of the global use cases, there's a real possibility that this tidal wave hits in 2025. What that tidal wave looks like is fundamental change. It looks like change in the way that we operate, in the way that we communicate, in the way that we capture value, and the way that we give value back to our customers, back to our employees, and back to society. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir in a way though. Just about all of you are on board and know about the rate in which AI can change our organizations. But as Saba mentioned, 70% of us are under-resourced, and we're trying to communicate not only what AI is to the rest of the organization, but what it can do in our organization. So my presentation is going to focus on just one simple question. Are you ready for AI? So normally, from a statistical perspective, when I look at this type of question, I find the best thing to do in the first situation is just to ask you, how ready do you feel your organizations are to harness artificial intelligence? We see on a simple scale of 1 to 5, 66% of people are in what we call negative sentiment. You're unprepared. 25%, neutral. 9% are in positive sentiment, and the amount of people which are fully prepared, 0. Nobody. I rechecked these statistics on Friday to make sure that no new surveys came in, and I actually don't mind that statistic so much because it's honest, it's authentic, we can trust it, and now that it's there, we can talk about it. So I'll give you some statistics in this presentation to help you support your use cases and your benchmarking to be prepared for AI. But there's also a lot of breakout sessions discussing this, a catalog of exceptional providers in the other room who are keen to talk to you to also help you on your journey. When examining the statistics for this, generally we start to group respondents, unprepared, neutral, and prepared. Because then what we can do is we see what common features there are within each group and what changes between groups. Just know if we reference prepared, there is the people that are 4 out of 5 because no one's 5 out of 5. We found quite a lot of things in the data which are indicative of being more prepared, but there were 3 that really stood out. The first one is, if you have good data governance, you are 4 times more likely to be in that prepared category. That makes perfect sense, because to harness AI properly, you need the right data quality. And if you have fear in the trust of AI around that black box effect that occurs, then you need the right governance procedures to have transparency and to meet your ethical obligations when it comes to artificial intelligence. If you have maturity in data architecture and information architecture, you are 7 times more likely to be in that prepared category. I guess there's no AI without IA, right? And when you think about that, a lot of it's about connecting different sources of information, having a single source of the truth, because you need a large amount of quality data to correctly leverage AI systems. The last one surprised me a little bit, but when I thought about it, it made incredible sense. If you have a good data culture and literacy in your organization, you are 9 times more likely to be in that prepared category, which is astounding. And when you view literacy and culture, you should do it at all levels of the organization. It's the ability of all end users to understand the context of AI and how to use it effectively, as well as the board and the senior leadership seeing not only technology, but AI as strategic in driving outcomes in your organization. It's interesting when I think about the pillars of technology, people, and process that we always talk about when we have a look at IT initiatives. Looks like artificial intelligence is exactly the same. So we can see the areas of maturity that are effective in driving AI. How generally mature are we in our data strategy to support AI? Let's have a look. So we have immature in the black and mature in the red. So 29% of you are mature at evidence-based dashboards, and then it drops off a little bit. I'm going to make these slides available to you. Generally, I don't like big lists of things, but I did want you to see how those percentages cascade off. And a lot of these things like standardized data governance, creating a single view of customer, these are good hygiene measures with data, even if you're not doing AI. Some of those points that have lower levels of maturity, building data-driven products, democratizing data assets. I reread Peter Weil's book recently, Future Ready, and from the global studies that MIT does, I believe Peter uses a term that these are effective in building sustainable growth. So it's something that we should consider locally. So far we've seen that we're not prepared, we're not having the maturity that underpins AI. However, we're doing it anyway. If you have a look at the deployment rates of advanced artificial intelligence, which is anything neural network-based, it's vision, it's deep learning, it's natural language processing, and machine learning, there is a large proportion of people in the piloting and the small-scale deployment. You see a lot more people in the small-scale deployment of machine learning because it generally suits a specific use case, right? We use anomaly detection because we have a fraud problem. We use regression because we have an issue of degradation of a machinery, and we want to see when it hits a critical point. Having said that, in general, it looks like there is a bit of an issue going from proof of concept into production and then into scale throughout our organization. And this is going to continue this year, because when we ask about some of those more advanced AI initiatives, like large language models, 27% are planning on building or deploying large language models this year. That is about 40 to 50 of you in this room. It's quite a lot. And when you think about what I showed you earlier, that 9% of people feel prepared, what it means is that even if you don't feel prepared, 20% of people underprepared, well 19, are still going to have a crack at large language models. I love that. But I think there's a bit of fear of missing out there. And my colleague Byron's going to talk about this in his roundtable today, that when it comes to large language models and generative AI, are we starting with the technology and then trying to fit it to a business case? Is that counterproductive, or is science for science sake a good thing in this case? So get your phones ready, because we're going to do a live poll on this. There's an interesting train of things that's happening that we're not necessarily prepared for AI. We don't necessarily have the maturity, we're doing it. What do we hope to get out of it, would be my question. So let's bring up the live poll. So what are you hoping to achieve this year? Are you looking for a proof of concept? Do you have an innovation budget that you just spend to anyway? Do you want 1 or 2 use cases? Things that you can then take to the board and show some sort of improvement, something that you're doing that's tangible within your organization. The measurable satisfaction is, let's say you do an employee survey or customer survey now, and then you do one in 12 months' time. Do you want to see an improvement on that that's anchored to AI? And then, of course, transforming the business. Great, so we're looking for 1 to 2 business use cases from the look of it, and we'll get you the results to this poll as well. Feel free to keep going if you're not quite finished yet. So we're going to do something interesting. I would invite you all to come back next year, because what we're going to do in 12 months' time is we're going to say how many use cases and what's the impact that AI's had on your business over the past 12 months. We're going to see if your prediction matches up to your forecast. So what's stopping you from getting these use cases? What are your biggest barriers? Well, we've separated them off into technical and cultural. This was an open text response question, so we have done text processing to aggregate the responses. Lack of data skills was the biggest technical inhibitor, and we had to recheck that. Normally you'd consider that in the cultural side, right? But when we delved into some of the text responses, it was lack of data scientists, lack of ability to build the right architecture, cloud skills to correctly leverage AI. So we do need to invest in the skills that will feed AI, and we need to keep an eye out for the providers that are maturing in the space that have better plug and play potential if we're going to start to leverage AI. We have data quality, governance, lack of funding and resources we've talked about. I would say with the data quality and data governance thing, there are a couple of articles out at the moment about hypothesis that generative AI is going to fix data quality issues. The evidence at the moment is contrary. To people that have actually tested these types of systems, it's about 10x the hallucination rate when it's got bad data. Hallucination rate is just a really nice way of saying that sometimes when these models don't know the answer, they make shit up. We see a lack of data culture, a fear in trust in AI as well. That's linked to a lack of understanding and changing regulation. You need a framework. If you don't trust AI, adopt a framework. NIST has a great one. Wharton Institute of Pennsylvania, the Department of Science has an Australian-based one. We've had a look at them and we've collated some. We've got an ethical AI framework that we believe works for mature organizations in Australia. So I feel like there's been a bit of doom and gloom with this, and I do feel sorry. I will give you a silver lining. There are people that do this incredibly. I'm sure many and many of you know the Melbourne-based organisation Car Sales. And when Anthony talks about the exponential enterprise, they really come top of mind. They leverage AI in a real meaningful way. There are 3 main ways that they do that. The first is they start small with a real-world problem. Let's just take their computer vision technology, so camera and image processing. They noticed that the photographers that work for car sales, as well as some of the major vendors, were spending a huge amount of time classifying different images. So they built a convolutional neural network to start to classify those images. This is incredibly low risk. It's low risk because if you take a photo of a boot and it tells you it's an engine, it's not a huge deal. The second thing that they do is anything that's AI, they build in something that's customer trust centric. For this, it was the ability to take a photo of a license plate and then blur it or a face. So if you wanted to put a vehicle up on site, you wouldn't be worried about your privacy or someone, say, copying your number plate in a fraudulent way if they're stealing a vehicle. They then scale what works. So they improve this vision technology to then go through photos to protect the buyers. So is that really a Mercedes AMG that you're looking at, or did someone just stick the tag on it? Has the image been photoshopped so that scratch looks less significant? And then they start to deploy these in meaningful ways.